how do you think the response to the coronavirus is compared to previous crises, that you saw firsthand in your tenure as a Homeland Security Secretary? I mean, are we failing or incomplete?
We're failing. I hate to say it. This used to be my most stressful week when I was Secretary of Homeland Security because of the convergence of all the world leaders in Manhattan and the security that was required. So looking at the answer to your question from the U.S. perspective, the nation on earth with one of the mightiest public healthcare apparatuses has had the poorest public healthcare response. And this crisis was not unanticipated, but it is unprecedented on a once-in-a-century basis. It's pervasive. It touches every corner of our country. And we have not responded well, frankly, because at the level of our national leadership, our leaders have not been straight with the American people, have not told us the truth about the danger we face and what we need to do to correct it and to solve it. There's also the fact that the public health authority to quarantine people, to require them to stay at home in this country, resides at the state and local level. And we've had a patchwork of different executive orders and quarantines. But at the national level, our leaders have failed to accurately convey to us the danger that we face and what we need to do to solve it. Therefore, we have the situation we're in now. A notable exception has been here in the Northeast, where our governors have been relatively straight with us and told us the truth. And we had the spike in mid-April, and the numbers have gone down dramatically since then because members of the public here in the Northeast have been fairly disciplined about following the rules that our leaders have set out for us.
So, well, first of all, I'm very glad that Montclair is overrepresented on this panel. But tell me, as far as the pandemic goes, this is a scenario that you rehearsed. There were public health challenges when you were in office in the Obama administration. Is the failure, as you see it, fundamentally around political leadership and communication? Are there practical lessons that aren't being followed?
Well, to be sure and to be honest, when you're dealing with a crisis, no government gets the response exactly perfect. And there will be many, many critics around how someone responds to, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it was Ebola or a surge on our southern border or a cyber attack. No one gets it perfect. The problem here has been that the pandemic, as it hit the U.S., has been so pervasive and the crisis so large. We in Homeland Security think about disasters and crisis responses being regional, a couple of states at a time, not nationwide. And so for that reason, obviously, among others, the response has been very, very problematic. No government can get it perfect, but in my view, the problems have been exacerbated by a failure of national leadership to accurately and adequately communicate to us what we need to do.
As you look ahead over the next 6 months, is there anything that leaps out at you as the biggest thing we should be looking for and trying to anticipate as a real risk, or something that we're not got our arms around fully yet?
Well, I think of security risk in short-term and long-term ways. So long-term, in my view, the biggest risk to our nation and our world is climate change, global warming. As Barack Obama used to say, it's a slow motion emergency. Therefore, our leaders fail to put it on the top of their inbox to address. Short-term, we're of course in an election season, and our democracy is under threat, both by external actors, those who seek to push out misinformation and extremist views. And frankly, the way Americans receive their information has led to, in my judgment, the increased political polarization that we see right now that very much affects our democracy and our government's very ability to function effectively.
Secretary Johnson, I am haunted, as I'm sure you are in some ways, by October 7th, 2016, which is a date that many of us will remember for the Access Hollywood tape. But in fact, the reason I'm bringing that up is because that was a day that you signed a letter, I believe, and issued a statement for the first time publicly attributing the Russian election interference and saying that it was, in fact, designed to elect Donald Trump. So, I mean, how do you take Ian's point right now that there woulda, coulda, shoulda done more differently somehow? It must be very hard for you to listen to really what's a very circular conversation. Here we are in 2020, and we're saying many of the same things that people were saying in 2016 about this.
Well, woulda, coulda, shoulda is to a very large extent the nature of the job, particularly in national security. There's always somebody who says you should do it better. But in 2016, we were dealing with something that was very new. Efforts to sway public opinion, influence public opinion through information ops, nation to nation, is not new, but the weaponization of it in the run-up to an election was new. And there are a number of us who felt very strongly that we should at least inform the American people about what was going on, which we did on October 7th. I thought it was going to be big, above-the-fold news, but it was not. The mainstream press went for lust and greed and Access Hollywood that day, and it wasn't really until December that the mainstream press came back to, hey, the Russians interfered in our election. Yes, we tried to tell you that before, but you were focused on, all other things. This administration has now had almost 4 years to contend with this very same threat. And if you believe our intelligence community, they're as active now as they were before, if not more so. I agree with Ian's earlier point that the threat is both domestic and external. What's more dangerous is that the external threats are learning how to complement and work in tandem with the domestic threats and support the efforts going on within our borders.